Well, ladies and gentlemen, we've all been knocking on the doors of generative AI since the conversation started. And of course, so with this conversation, we're actually going to take a dive into analyzing or understanding the enterprise implications of generative AI. And we've all seen statistic after statistic of how exactly this technology and the impact of generative AI is slated to disrupt industries as we know it, disrupt the way we work, and obviously derive outcomes for our businesses. So on that note, without any further ado, I'm going to dwell right into the first question that I have, and this one is for you, Lakshmikant.
Sure.
Uh, we particularly want to understand how Dell Technologies is helping its clients basically unlock better outcomes with generative AI solutions. And what are some of the advantages and benefits of OpenAI that could actually be exploited with the use of Dell validated designs?
Hey, thanks, Kanji. Good evening, everybody. I think it's quite an interesting question, which is actually open-ended. I can speak hours together on that topic, but more specifically to what Dell is looking at is, see, this generative AI. So AI is not new for all of us, right? So it's been there for ages, but in different platforms. And more specifically, what we are trying to see with generative AI is can we kind of get the best out of the data what we have. And I think what shift we are probably seeing is moving from the code base way of using the AI to a no code or a codeless way of doing the AI, right? So basically all the players are trying to build in those platforms wherein the data can be consumed and they kind of ingress the data and then produce the required information, the outcome for us. And what Dell primarily is trying to see or what we have absorbed is most of the project, they start with a very smaller scope of understanding a particular outcome of the organization initiatives. But later, through the success of that, they look at larger outcomes or larger projects. And that's where the problem starts, right? Because they don't have the infrastructure or the skill set or the right people or the data scientist who can actually kind of bring those algorithms or those sequences to actually give those outcomes. So what probably from Dell perspective, what we are trying to do is, can we start kind of be with the data scientist or the coding team or even with the senior leadership, the organization, and understand what are they trying to gain out of this generative AI, or even to make it more elaborate from the AI or a ML or a data analyst perspective, right? Because there are many different names for this today.
Absolutely.
So, and then try and see where the infrastructure, because when we look at AI, infrastructure is one piece of it, right? So which actually holds the entire data together, but there are various layers within which will contribute to the final outcome. So we are trying to see where our piece of things fits in, and what we have realized is the more we have the integration between these layers, the better is the outcome, right? While we have the maturity curve going up, and then the smaller data, the smaller outcomes become the larger outcomes. So that integration will actually matter a lot, right? So because that's where we want to kind of touch upon the unstructured data, or we want to try out something like new as the text to speech or images, photographs, and we want to bring out some analysis out of it. And then we realize that the platform we have doesn't support such kind of outcome. Then we go out and then we search, do we have a storage or a platform which supports larger GPU platforms? And then can we buy a storage which is more scale out NAS, which can help us? And then we realize that the initial infra we had and the final infra we have, they are all in silos, right? So I think we are trying to see if we can start with a more data-centric. We can actually provide a platform which can start small and then probably grow along with the scope of the outcome we are looking at. So and the entire portfolio we are trying to build, or the partnerships we are trying to build in the so-called practice we are trying to build, is how do we help customer connect those dots with different application vendors or these AI players, and then kind of be with their journey. While the infrastructure will scale out, but those different layers of outcome will also grow as per the scope.
Absolutely. Well, that's brilliantly articulated. And in your articulation, you refer to two situations. One is the as-is environment, and one is where we want to get at as an output. So when we compare both of them, and this question I want to bring into you, Abhilash, is that how can Pentagon and Dell together help with fitting in generative AI in the current situation and also enhance existing processes to deliver the kind of outcomes that enterprises are looking for?
So, thank you, Kanchi, and good evening to everyone. Part of the question is being answered by Lakshmi. So, while enterprises have understood what AI can do for them, right now the time is for the generative AI, which is a part of the AI, but it brings more accelerated time to result, more automations, and more agility, right? So, when we are thinking about more agility, time to result, and automation, there are two parts. One is the integration and services. The second one is the underlying infrastructure, which Lakshmi covered. So while you are planning to consolidate your data, while you are planning to build your data lakes around structured and unstructured data, what you have spread across your enterprise, we as a partner work strategically with Dell in implementing those infrastructure which rightly fits to your need when it comes to running batches or running multiple LMs or maybe processing. At the same time, we come up with our experience where we have been working with few of the foundation models in other platforms. From there, we can gain our knowledge and our experience and implement that to your use cases at similar time, right? So that is how we work with Dell, and that is how we have been speaking to multiple customers along with Dell on how can we leverage the data what they have for a better performance. At the same time, how can they also grow using generative AI as an accelerator for their business?
Absolutely. Let's now zoom into this a little bit and from the lens of a multi-cloud environment. So to you, Abhilash, again, what I would like to understand is how can generative AI be effectively integrated and leveraged within a multi-cloud environment? And what are some of the benefits that organizations can basically expect? And what is it that can be achieved from this integration of generative AI over a multi-cloud environment?
Yeah, thanks. So it's not only multi-cloud, it is actually hybrid multi-cloud. So
yeah, absolutely, hybrid
so
and multi-cloud.
We have Dell infrastructure, because there are customers who are planning to hold their data on premises. They do not go. They do not want to go on cloud, but there are few data they can take on cloud. So the best part multi-cloud brings in, and particularly clouds brings in, is the democratization of technology. So you can use any technology as per your wish, rather than waiting for your devices to come, or maybe 50% of the skilling is also covered by the cloud providers, right? So while you are planning to run multiple LLMs or maybe integrate few foundation models, at the same time seamlessly integrating between these clouds, you can use let's say data ops or ML ops as integrations, and you can very seamlessly integrate to process your data and bring in generative AI results on the data lakes or maybe the storage pool what you have created for your organizations.
Brilliant. So then let's talk about and switch gears to the next part of the conversation. And Lakshmikant, to you, and of course to both of you actually, you can take that in turns, is what are the potential risks that can emerge when we are on our journey to deploy generative AI?
I think one of the potential risk what we have seen is while the research says most of the projects on generative AI have failed because we don't actually foresee the story which we want to achieve, right? So probably because that would have come from either a business leader that this is the direction I want to, but that alignment with the application or the admin codes and all is not properly done. And that scoping of entire what they want to achieve is something which they miss, right? So the biggest risk is that alignment of the story with at various levels within the organization, so that then they can actually understand what they want to achieve and then stage it, because that's not a overnight something they can just log in and get what they want to achieve, right? So that is a potential risk what we see. But outside that, so some of them who have achieved or maybe during the course of they attaining what they want to attain, is the risk of exposing this data for the users who would be using, right? So these days, very often we are seeing in various blogs, people are complaining that my data, which was supposed to be on my portal or website, is being exposed, and people are able to read my IP or my content on an open platform. So while we are trying to help the content seeker, but the content creator is actually kind of getting penalized that this data is all over. And that is on a lighter thing is something which data can be used. But if it is an organization data, especially the chat GPTs and which are more open, and now most of the organization preferring, can that be more intranet than internet, right? So can whatever search we do be more internal to the users rather than that data going outside? So, and most of those platforms are now looking at, can they make it more internal to those organizations and ensure that data is not going out, right? So especially when Vilash was talking about keeping these platforms on the cloud, we have to ensure that they are properly protected. These tools are properly protected so that the data, what we are trying to generate, the outcome, what we are generating is only visible to the people who are authorized to bid for it, right? So those are the potential risks. And second, while we are taking data as the centrifugal force of everything, it is important we protect the data, right? So the risk of it getting hacked or it getting attacked, sorry for that. So it's becoming more vulnerable today. So the ransomware attackers or the attackers realize that this is the data fuel, and can we actually kind of attack those things? So one of the potential risk what we are saying is how good is this data being protected? And do we have a contingency plan of protecting the data through various platforms? Data protection, backup is one of them, or air gapping the data to a different platforms is one of them. So these are the potential vulnerable areas what we are saying, apart from the integrities of the AI, where there could be a code problem or it could be a data leakage problem and all this thing.
Well, thank you very much for outlining it in that fashion. And while we take a pause there with Lakshmikant, Abhilash, what would you want to add on to this?
Sure. So, Lakshmi briefly touched upon the governance and the infrastructure part of the risk, right? So, in addition to that, there is a data privacy. Because you are running generative AI models that is bringing data from anywhere, maybe the user data which is not meant to be published, it is being published. There are risks of cyber security in terms of cyber attack, and the biggest risk what we are seeing now in political and sociological terms is the bias. Because you have been driven by the generative AI, what they say. Let's say, for example, even we are also right now writing mails as per the generative AI chat GPT suggests, right? So the feeling or maybe the emotion that the generative AI is driving, that the biggest threat there is they do not actually know the source of the content. So while you do not know the source of the content and you're bringing in all those assumptions through Gen AI, so there is a risk of bias. And mostly the data security and data privacy is the biggest concern when it comes to the compliance part, adding to Lakshmi's infrastructure side.
It's quite brilliant. And I'm now going to come to one of my favorite questions, which I've been asking across panels, and the audience will support me on this, is that while we talk about deploying any form of AI, and particularly Gen AI, what are the regulatory aspects that we need to factor in? How do you ensure compliance, and what exactly needs to be done to develop a governance model for generative AI? Each one of you.
You want to start? So some of those things I've touched upon. So right, so from what is the source of the data, and what are those principles we need to follow? So who should be touching what kind of data tables, and ensuring the data is protected very well within the organization, and if required, there is a governance model which does the regular checks of this data, which is in place. That needs to be properly checked in a periodic manner. And who is accessing the data at various levels, right? So I think those are the things which need to be built on a framework, and that needs to be monitored. So before that, it needs to be also approved by the organizational leaders or regulatories that this is the framework we are trying to build. I think that's a few things which I feel should be added.
I think it should also go in parallel with the government regulations and law, because the data protection law being coming in, and then government is also looking at data as the next thing to protect outside of the borders what we are protecting. So maybe while you are planning for generative AI models within your organizations, you can look at data masking as well as tokenizations or encryption as an option to consider, because while we are doing something new, there is a temptation to go alone and go first, right? So while you are trying to build those practices within organizations, we are there to work with you and bring down all these governance models along with the implementation and execution models. So that is where Dell and Pentagon comes in to work along with you.
Brilliant, yeah, be your partners for progress
Yes.
on the Gen AI journey. Well, ladies and gentlemen, very quickly, well, I do see that there's a time's out sign that has been flashed to us. I wanted to quickly ask any of you, if you have any questions for either Lakshmikant or Abhilash, you can quickly take it up and try and answer this in about 1 minute, 60 seconds on the clock. Anybody? If not, then I have some questions for you. So either you can answer them or you can ask questions, because I'm definitely going to use those 2 minutes. Okay, then let's do this. The questions that I want to ask, how many of you are using generative AI? Any form of it, whether it's GPT or anything. How many of you are using it?
Oh.
Okay. I was expecting 80%.
Or you're using it and you do not want to say yes?
Yeah.
All right. How many of you are using it for your personal usage and not for your organizations? Now can we do a show of hands? And you see that significantly the number goes up. So the reason why I asked you these questions is just to understand how you've been experimenting with the technology. Well, Lakshmikant and Abhilash are both going to be available through the networking as well, which will happen in some more time after a few sessions. So any questions that you have, you can take up with them one-on-one as well. And with that, let's
Thank you,
close
Kanchi.
the
Thank you
session.
very much.
Thank you very much,
Thank you,
both
Kanchi.
of you, for this engaging discussion on the aspects of generative AI and how they can be leveraged.